afternoon. Hi, everyone. Today, I convened a special meeting of provincial and territorial finance ministers to discuss the Canada Pension Plan and the importance of protecting Canadians' pensions from coast to coast to coast. Depuis une soixantaine d'années, le régime de pension garantit une retraite sûre et digne aux Canadiennes et aux Canadiens, ce qui inclut bien entendu les gens de l'Alberta. J'ai entendu des inquiétudes de la part de nombreux Canadiens et de nombreux Albertains au sujet de la proposition du gouvernement de l'Alberta de sortir les Albertains du régime de pension du Canada. La Chambre du commerce de Calgary a déclaré que la modification du régime de retraite de l'Alberta pourrait compromettre la mobilité de la main-d'œuvre, la stabilité des entreprises et des consommateurs, ainsi que la confiance des investisseurs. La Fédération du travail de l'Alberta a déclaré que le passage proposé à un régime de retraite provincial serait vraiment effrayant pour quiconque envisage une retraite sûre et stable. Of course, Alberta has the right to withdraw from the CPP should it so choose. All of the ministers recognize that today. And every single minister, including me, a proud daughter of Alberta, spoke about our respect for the people of Alberta and for the absolutely essential role that Alberta plays as an economic engine for our whole country. But Alberta's choice about the CPP also implicates every single Canadian. So it was important for all of us as the federal government and provincial and territorial finance ministers to be present and to discuss together what the consequences for the whole country would be if Alberta were to leave the CPP, what the consequences would be for people across the country, including for the people of Alberta. That includes the financial reality for a province that decides to withdraw from the CPP. And that's why I told ministers today that I would ask the Chief Actuary to provide an estimate of the asset transfer based on a reasonable interpretation of the provisions in the CPP legislation. Our officials will work together to define the precise taskings for this work. One of the other points that I raised in our meeting, and that was raised by many other ministers, was the issue of portability. The CPP allows Canadians to live and work anywhere in Canada without jeopardizing their retirement. Many ministers spoke personally in this meeting. They talked about their own lives living and working across Canada, and they talked about the lives of members of their family and how portability had been really important. If Alberta were to withdraw from the CPP, the federal government would need to issue a regulation recognizing comparability with the CPP, and Alberta would need to negotiate complex, time-consuming portability agreements with the CPP and with the Quebec Pension Plan. Furthermore, if Alberta were to choose to leave, the government of Alberta would also need to negotiate international social security agreements to ensure similar treatment of contributors who spend part of their careers abroad. As an example, Quebec has negotiated its own social security agreements with 39 countries, and Canada has negotiated with 60. This would be a complex and multi-year process, and it would be taking place at a time of real uncertainty, geopolitical uncertainty, global economic uncertainty around the world. I truly believe, as Deputy Prime Minister and as Finance Minister of Canada, that adding to that uncertainty right now is not something that would help Albertans or any Canadians. Because at the end of the day, this conversation is all about the well-being and the financial security of all Canadians. Since the CPP was founded nearly 60 years ago, no province has ever left. This action is unprecedented, it would be very complicated, and it would come at a time of great uncertainty and complexity. Protecting the pensions of every single Canadian is a priority for our government. We will always stand up for the Canada Pension Plan and for the secure and dignified retirement it provides to all Canadians, a point I made clear in today's meeting. This is just the beginning of a national conversation, and I expect to meet with my ministerial counterparts in person in the coming weeks. Thank you, and I'm happy to take your questions.
It'll be one question, one follow-up. Bienvenue à la conférence de presse aujourd'hui. Ce sera une question et une question en suivi. Merci. Thank you.
Hi, Ms. Freeland. Mackenzie Gray with Global News. Opposition parties in Alberta have been saying essentially they think Ms. Smith's proposal on the pension reform is a political stunt and ability to try and extort more out of Ottawa, and that they don't actually want to leave. From your conversations today, do you think the Alberta government is actually serious in going through with this?
I am not going to speak for the Alberta government. It's for the Alberta government to state its own position. What I will say is yesterday I had the chance to speak to the head of the Calgary Chamber of Commerce, and she told me, as the Chamber has said publicly, about the Chamber's very real concerns about this effort. I met just this morning with Gil McGowan, the head of the Alberta Federation of Labour, and he also reiterated to me his very serious concerns. So I am hearing directly from Albertans about their concerns with this effort. I take that seriously.
The report that the Alberta government commissioned saying $330 billion could potentially be coming to them, do you think that is a realistic number? I know you've got the Chief Actuary looking at that, but just ballpark, do you think that is a realistic number that the pension plan could potentially have to give to Alberta if they left?
No, I do not.
All right. Next question. Prochaine question.
Judy Turn with CTV News. Minister, do you think, what can you tell us about your relationships with the provinces, given the fact that the Alberta Premier wants to withdraw from CPP, given the fact that the Premier of Saskatchewan wants to stop paying the carbon tax on home heating, given the fact that the Premier of Ontario today has called out your government in terms of being divisive in regards to the carbon tax? Why would you agree with that your policies, that this government is dividing the country, and that your affordability measures do not impact each region of the country fairly?
No, I would not agree with that at all. And I'm glad you mentioned the Premier of Ontario. The Premier and I developed a very good working relationship during COVID. I speak to him often. I spoke to him just last weekend. Clearly, there are areas of disagreement between governments in this country. That's normal. What's really important is that we are able to sit down together and work together to address issues of mutual concern that matter to Canadians. And there was disagreement at today's meeting, but the important thing was we were all there, we were all able to have a conversation. That's what Canada's about, and that is the approach I really, really believe in taking.
We've submitted a question towards your communications department that has not been fully answered for 2 days, specifically about penalties when it comes to not paying the carbon tax on home heating. Is there, even though that threat exists from Premier Scott Moe, that he will stop collecting those carbon fees, what can the federal government do to prevent that from him acting unilaterally? Will the province, will anyone incur penalties? Will there be fees or perhaps even jail time?
The federal government expects everyone in Canada to obey the law. Canada is the country of peace, order, and good government. I think that's something all Canadians believe in. That's something we expect.
Next question, prochaine question.
Bonjour, Madame la Ministre. D'abord, sur votre réunion sur donc les problèmes de plan de pension, est-ce que vous avez senti le support des autres ministres des Finances, des ministres des autres provinces? À quel point vous supporte-t-il ou supporte-t-il l'Alberta?
Je pense que c'est plutôt une question pour les ministres. Ce n'est pas pour moi de parler pour chaque ministre. Mais je pouvais vous dire que la question du régime de pension, c'est une question qui touche chaque Canadien et Canadienne. Et c'est pour cette raison que tous les ministres étaient là. Et je pense que c'est pour eux d'exprimer leur point de vue, mais je pense que je pourrais me permettre de dire que chaque ministre comprend l'importance de notre régime de pension. Chaque ministre comprend l'importance pour la sécurité des Canadiens. Une ministre, peut-être même deux ministres, ont dit que notre système de soins de santé et notre régime de pension sont les deux pierres angulaires de la sécurité des Canadiens. Je suis d'accord avec ce point de vue.
Et on comprend que certains ministres auraient voulu parler de la taxe carbone durant cette rencontre. Certains ministres disent, bien, écoutez, nous, on trouve qu'actuellement, le gouvernement fédéral ne traite pas les provinces de façon égale. Quelle réponse leur avez-vous donnée aujourd'hui à ces ministres qui auraient voulu d'abord qu'on en parle davantage et qui se sentent traités injustement?
C'était une conversation ciblée sur la question des pensions. Et je pense que tous les Canadiens et Canadiennes seront d'accord avec l'idée qu'on pourra donner 1 heure de notre temps pour discuter la sécurité de notre régime de pension. Ce n'est pas trop, parce que c'est vraiment un enjeu qui touche chacun et chacune de nous. Le but de cette réunion spéciale du début était de discuter le régime de pension. On était très clair de ça. On a convoqué la réunion à cause de la lettre que le ministre ontarien m'a écrite et il a demandé une réunion spéciale pour discuter le régime de pension. C'était le thème de cette réunion et je pense que c'est pas seulement très normal, c'est approprié d'avoir une réunion spéciale ciblée à ce sujet. On aura en décembre une réunion des ministres du Finances fédérales et territoriales avec la ministre fédérale et on pourra discuter tous les enjeux qui sont importants pour les provinces et territoires et qui sont importants pour le fédéral.
Good afternoon, Marina von Stackelberg from CBC News. Will there be any further exemptions to the carbon tax on home heating?
No.
Straight no, no future of that. Okay. My follow-up question, I wanted to follow up on what my...
Sorry, one question, one follow-up.
That's just a clarity.
It's one question, one follow-up.
That,
It's one question, one follow-up, I'm sorry.
I'm hoping that I can ask my second question because I just wanted the clarity on that.
I'm so sorry, it's one question, one follow-up.
It's okay,
Okay, yeah,
Kat, it's okay, it's okay,
Thank
it's
you.
fine.
Thank you. My follow-up question is, we are hearing, as you know, that the Saskatchewan government is threatening to stop collecting the carbon tax. We're hearing that the New Brunswick government is also looking at legal options. I want to follow up on my colleague's question here. What would the Liberal government do? Would there be fines? Would there be legal action if that happens?
It is entirely appropriate, and I think an expectation shared by all Canadians, that everyone in the country should follow the law. That's our expectation, and it's our job to ensure that the law is enforced. It will be.
Thank you.
Next question, second question.
Hi, Minister Rafi Majikani on CBC Radio. I'm wondering, I heard you say, it was a targeted meeting. Nevertheless, 5 provinces wanted to talk about the carbon tax today. It seems like you did not engage them on it. Would it really have been impossible to at least talk about this a little bit when it's a discussion that's seizing the whole country and not wait till December?
Today's meeting was called in response to a letter that I thought was very appropriate sent to me by the Ontario Minister of Finance. He believed, and I agreed, that the CPP and the pensions of all Canadians are an absolutely central issue for the security of every single person in Canada. And I would add, at this time of tremendous instability around the world, it's especially important for Canadians to know that their governments across the country take their pension security seriously. I believe that that's why the Ontario Finance Minister wrote me a letter asking me to call a special meeting. I agreed with him. I called a special meeting. Ministers came to attend the meeting specifically because of that invitation to discuss that subject. And, when I think about Canadians, when I think about my own constituents, I don't think an hour is too much time for this group of ministers who are uniquely charged with protecting the pension security of Canadians to spend devoted to this central and essential issue. I absolutely recognize that there are a lot of different issues that provinces and territories across the country are interested in. And that's why we have an annual federal provincial finance ministers meeting that will be happening next month. And I look forward to working with ministers on the agenda.
Nevertheless, Ontario Premier Doug Ford did suggest that the carbon tax should have been on the agenda today. He said so publicly, and now we've got New Brunswick mulling a legal opinion about whether or not they could get out of collecting the carbon tax. Do you have any political allies left in this fight?
We have a lot of political allies in the country. When it comes to the relationship between provinces and the federal government, that can be challenging. I was Intergovernmental Affairs Minister during COVID, and that has left me with 2 convictions about the relationship between the federal government and provinces and territories across the country. One is, it's really hard work. Canada is a huge and diverse country, and different provinces and territories have different perspectives, different interests, different needs. My second really profound conviction is Canada works when we are able to sit around a table to talk candidly about the issues where we disagree, about the issues where we agree, to try to make progress and advance the issues where we agree, and to be candid about our disagreements. That's the approach that I believe in taking. It can be hard, it can be frustrating. There is no unanimity ever in our vast and diverse country, but I do believe that on the most important issues, at the end of the day, we always do find a way to work together. And actually, today's meeting was very encouraging for me in that respect, that everyone came together. There were clearly some differences around the table, but we were able to listen to each other and agree to keep on working at it.
All right, next question, prochaine question.
Good afternoon, Minister. Mark Ramsey with the Toronto Star. If the Chief Actuary's numbers don't align with Alberta's claim that they'd be owed 53% of the CPP in an exit, as you have predicted, what will Ottawa's next steps be?
One thing I learned during the NAFTA negotiations is to never answer hypothetical questions. This is a complicated process. This possibility, which is being mooted, that one province might leave the CPP, is posing brand new questions for our whole country. This has never happened before. That's why it's going to be really, really important to have a calm, fact-based conversation. It's really important to recognize that this issue is about Alberta's decision, and Alberta has the right to make its choice, but that it is an issue that involves and touches on every single Canadian. So we need a truly national discussion about this, and that's why it was important to have a special meeting devoted to this issue with all the provinces and territories represented. And it's going to be important for us to take it step by step by step, to be very careful, thoughtful, and fact-based, and to be sure that everyone in Canada is making their decisions about this based on the facts and making their voice heard based on the facts.
Some have said that this process could take many, many years to culminate, and it could end up in legal and political battles. Are you ready to take on what this could do for Canada's national unity?
This is an unprecedented process. The law lays it out as a multi-year process. I do think that it's so important for us to remember two things as we work on this together. The first is how important pensions are to Canadians, how important the CPP is to the security that Canadians have, that we know there's going to be something for us at the end of the day when we retire, and how well the CPP works. You know, the CPP, and many ministers said this, it is the envy of the world. It is one of the crown jewels of the financial infrastructure that underpins our country. It underpins our AAA credit rating because it is well funded. So we have something really strong, really effective that all of us rely on. And we have to always bear that in mind as we work on this issue. The second thing that is really, really important, as your question suggests, is to remember that Canada is best when we work together, and to remember what a great country Canada is. We will have differences, and we do have differences. All of us have an obligation to try really hard to focus on the areas where we agree and to advance the national interest there. And where we disagree, as we do, and we always have and we always will, to try to make those disagreements, to deal with those disagreements in a way that respects the interests and the needs of all Canadians. That's the approach that our government will always take, that I will always take.
All right, we'll have time for one last question. Une dernière question, merci.
Hi, Minister. David Slagree, iPolitics. When Minister Bethlen Falvey requested today's meeting, you organized it without delay. If Minister Horner or Minister Hartbauer from Alberta, Saskatchewan requested a similar meeting on the carbon tax, would you be receptive to organizing it in short order?
The good news is we have a federal, provincial, and territorial finance ministers meeting coming up in just a few weeks. We're going to have one in December, And that will be, that I look forward to working on the agenda with ministers from across the country. And that will be an opportunity for the federal government to bring forward the issues that are important to the federal government, and for provinces and territories across the country to bring forward the issues that are important to them.
Great. And just as a follow-up, I'm just curious, this press conference was supposed to start at 1, it started just after 1:30. Can we read anything into that? Did the meetings last longer than anticipated? Can you just shed any light on that?
Sure. The meeting did run over a little bit. People had a lot to say, and maybe we should have set aside more than 1 hour for the conversation. And Gil McGowan from the Alberta Federation of Labor was in town, and he wanted to see me. So he is an important voice in the country and an important voice on this issue. So I did want to take the time to say hello to him.
Right. Thanks.
And to the reporters here, I'm sorry to have kept you waiting. I really apologize for that.
I was just curious. Thank you.
All right. Okay. That concludes today's press conference. Fin à la conférence de presse. Merci tout le monde. Thank you so
Okay.
much, everyone.
Merci beaucoup. And just from me personally, as a former journalist, someone talked about like the challenge of waiting. I'm really sorry. I apologize for that. It's not nice. Okay. Have a good Friday, everybody. I will try, and I'll also like try just on the scheduling. But I do apologize. Thanks. Have a good day, guys.